radio and TV stations in every city and town, wherever they have TV and radio.
By the time the world crowned Smokey Robinson a legend, one part of his story was already locked away. It didn't fit the clean Motown narrative. It involved loyalty, regret, and a connection that refused to stay in one neat category. The two of them grew up together, rose together, and watched an entire movement form around them. To the public, they were collaborators, friends, symbols of an era. Behind the scenes, the lines were never that simple. Over the years, Smokey alternated between deflection and denial, never quite saying yes, but never fully saying no. Now, decades later, with nothing left to protect, he finally lets one truth slip. And in doing so, he quietly confirms what many suspected, but could never prove. The childhood that shaped Smokey Robinson. Born William Robinson Jr. on February 19, 1940, in Detroit, he came up in a working-class household where money was tight, but love was never in short supply. Still, love couldn't hold everything together. His parents divorced while he was still young, and not long after that, life hit him even harder. At just 10 years old, he lost his mother. From that point on, his older sister stepped in and became his caretaker, and in many ways, his anchor. Music became his escape. Around Detroit, he sang in local groups, finding comfort in harmonies and melodies, while the world around him kept shifting. It was during those early years that people started calling him Smokey, a name that would one day echo around the globe. A lot of folks assumed the nickname had something to do with his complexion, but that was never the truth. The name came from his godfather and favorite uncle, Claude. As a little boy, Robinson was obsessed with cowboy movies, and Uncle Claude would take him to the theater whenever he could. One day, he decided his nephew needed a proper cowboy name of his own and dubbed him Smokey Joe. Robinson loved it so much that it became part of his identity. He once remembered that from the time he was 3 years old, whenever anyone asked his name, he never said William. He always said Smokey Joe. When he turned about 12, he dropped the Joe and kept Smokey. The name stuck. A few years later, he formed his first group, the Matadors, who would later become known as the Miracles. That childhood nickname, born in movie theaters and family love, ended up traveling far beyond Detroit and into music history. Despite the rumors, Robinson always made it clear that his nickname had nothing to do with his skin tone. He heard the story, he understood why people believed it, but he shut it down every time. The name Smokey came from family, not from appearance. Behind that smooth voice and gentle presence, though, was a family history shaped by fear, survival, and the brutal realities of race in America. Robinson would later share the story of his father's childhood, and it painted a haunting picture of what black families endured in the early 1900s. His father, William Robinson Sr., was born in 1896 in Selma, Alabama. At just 10 years old, he was already working, delivering newspapers to help support his family. But every week, a white teenager 5 years older would steal his wages. Complaining wasn't an option. In that time and place, it could get you killed. So the boy kept working, knowing there was a good chance his money would be taken the moment he crossed paths with that kid. He thought about telling his older brothers, but fear stopped him. He knew they would protect him, and he also knew that kind of protection could bring a mob to their door. The risk wasn't just to him, but to everyone he loved. After 2 years of being robbed and humiliated, something snapped. His father went out and bought a Boy Scout knife, not to start trouble, but to make sure it ended. And it did. On payday, the bully tried him one last time. When he refused to hand over his money, The teen shoved him to the ground. That's when the knife came out, slicing deep into the bully's leg. The screaming drew attention, and just like that, the robberies stopped. But now, the danger was even greater. He was a 12-year-old black boy who had stabbed a white teenager. He knew what that meant, so he made a decision no child should ever have to make. He walked to the railroad tracks, jumped onto a moving train, and disappeared. He spent his teenage years drifting from place to place, living as a transient, until he eventually reached Cleveland at 19. He never went back to Selma, not once. Years later, Robinson would say he understood his father's pain, but his heart broke most for his grandmother. She lost her youngest child in a single night, watching him vanish into the darkness, never knowing if he was alive, safe, or coming home. How Motown's heartbeat was created. In 1955, Smokey Robinson was still just a teenager when he pulled together a doo-wop group with a few of his classmates. It started like a lot of young dream stories do, kids chasing harmony after school, hoping their voices could take them somewhere bigger. But everything shifted the moment Smokey met a young songwriter named Berry Gordy. Gordy immediately recognized something different in Smokey's writing, and, without hesitation, decided to mentor him. Smokey's sound was a blend of two worlds. He was deeply inspired by the doo-wop harmonies of the 1950s, those high, floating vocals and playful syllables that filled street corners and gymnasiums. At the same time, he soaked up the smooth, polished feel of jazz that was popular then. That mix became his signature. As the group grew, the five chimes evolved into a new version of themselves called the Matadors. This lineup even landed an audition with the manager of soul legend Jackie Wilson, a huge moment for a bunch of high school kids from Detroit. Still, even with all that momentum, music wasn't Smokey's original plan. For a long time, he wanted to be a dentist. That dream ended the moment he reached 12th grade and had to start dissecting things in class. He quickly realized he didn't have the stomach for it. So he switched gears and began taking prep courses for electrical engineering. But Smokey wasn't a kid who could afford to just focus on school. He had been working since he was 10 years old, delivering newspapers, shining shoes, running errands, working in grocery and drug stores, and pedaling his bike around town delivering telegrams after school. After graduating, Western Union offered him a full-time job. The plan was simple: work through the fall, save up enough money for clothes and books, and start college in January. It was a practical plan, a safe plan. Then August 1957 arrived, and everything changed. That month, Smokey and his group landed an audition with Brunswick Records, the same label that released Jackie Wilson's hits. Technically, the audition was a failure. The label passed, but one man in the room was paying close attention. When the group finished, he stopped them and asked where they got those songs. Smokey casually told him he wrote them. The man was stunned. He had just listened to 5 songs and couldn't believe one teenager had written them all. He admitted that he liked a couple of them, then asked the question that changed music history. Did Smokey have any more? Smokey did. He had a loose-leaf notebook filled with nearly 100 songs. The man asking was Berry Gordy, the writer behind Jackie Wilson's biggest hits. He told Smokey he liked his voice and that nobody sounded like him. From that moment on, a legendary partnership was born. The Matadors soon became the Miracles, and when Gordy launched Tamla Records in early 1959, the label that would become Motown, the Miracles were among the very first artists signed. Berry Gordy didn't just sign Smokey, he shaped him. One lesson stuck above all others: Every song had to be one clear idea, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even if the ending wasn't perfect, the listener should be able to feel it. Smokey took that advice to heart, and it showed almost immediately. One day, a song poured out of him in less than 30 minutes. It was called Shop Around. The group recorded it twice, the first version too slow, the second with more energy. That faster take was released in late 1960, and by early 1961, it was everywhere. It hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, topped the R&B chart, and became Motown's very first million-selling record. The label had officially arrived. Smokey Robinson quickly became more than just an artist. In 1962, only 3 years after Motown started, he was named vice president of the company. That meant he wasn't just making hits. He was helping shape the future of the label. One of those future stars walked in the door at just 11 years old. His name was Stevland Morris. The world would later know him as Stevie Wonder. When Smokey asked the kid if he could sing, Stevie confidently told him he could sing better than Smokey. That confidence never faded. Smokey always remembered him as a feisty little kid with a giant presence. Stevie had lost his sight due to complications from being born premature, but it never slowed him down. By the time he was 10, he had already mastered the piano, harmonica, and drums. A true prodigy. When Stevie began writing his own music, he and producer Hank Cosby struggled to find the right lyrics for one instrumental track. They brought it to Smokey for help. As soon as the music played, Smokey thought it sounded like a circus. That sparked an old idea: the image of a clown smiling through heartbreak. He wrote a song about someone who laughs on the outside while quietly falling apart inside. The result was The Tears of a Clown. Ironically, when the Miracles recorded it in 1967, Motown didn't think it was strong enough to release as a single. It sat quietly on the Make It Happen album for years, a hidden gem known only to devoted fans, even after Smokey stepped away from music in 1969 to focus on his family. Then, in 1970, something unexpected happened in the UK. The Northern Soul movement was exploding, and DJs were hunting for rare American soul records. Motown decided to re-release one Miracles song overseas, letting a British fan club leader choose which one. She picked The Tears of a Clown. It went straight to number 1. The song was re-released in the US and repeated the same success, becoming a chart-topping hit and pulling Smokey Robinson back out of retirement. What started as a forgotten album track became one of the most iconic songs in pop history. Behind the scenes, Smokey was also writing non-stop for other artists, quietly shaping the sound of an era. He penned massive hits for Mary Wells, Marvin Gaye, the Jackson 5, and the Temptations. But one song stood above the rest. After Mary Wells scored a number 1 hit with My Guy, Smokey flipped the idea, rewrote it from a male perspective, and crafted My Girl specifically for David Ruffin's voice. The Temptations brought it to life, adding their own magic to the background vocals. It became one of Motown's most beloved recordings of all time. Smokey never saw success as something to hoard. To him, Motown wasn't a business. It was family. If one artist won, they all won. That mindset is exactly why people still call him the heart of the label. He remained Motown's vice president until 1988, when the company was sold. Even after leaving, his loyalty to Berry Gordy never wavered. He and his first wife, Claudette, named their children Berry and Tamla, a living tribute to the company that changed their lives. And the respect went both ways. Berry Gordy often said Smokey wasn't just his first artist or his first writer. He was the soul of Motown. and decades later, that title still fits perfectly. Motown legend's darkest allegations revealed. In early May 2025, a major storm hit the legacy of Motown icon Smokey Robinson. On May 7th, 4 women filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court, accusing the 85-year-old singer of sexual assault and a long pattern of abuse. The claims were explosive, listing allegations of sexual battery, false imprisonment, gender violence, and a hostile work environment. The lawsuit also named Robinson's wife, Frances, accusing her of failing to intervene, despite allegedly knowing about his behavior. The women say they were all employees in the Robinson household, working as housekeepers and assistants between 2012 and 2024. What they described in the court filings painted a deeply troubling picture of life behind the closed doors of a home that, from the outside, seemed calm and glamorous. One accuser, identified as Jane Doe 1, said she worked for the Robinsons from January 2023 to February 2024. According to her, the first assault happened just a few months into the job, in March 2023. She claimed the abuse didn't stop there, alleging at least 7 assaults before she finally resigned. In her account, Robinson followed a calculated routine. She said he would drop his wife off at the nail salon and rush home, knowing they would be alone because she mostly worked weekends. She described being called into a bedroom Robinson referred to as his blue bedroom, where she said he would lock the door, send his dog out of the room, and appear wearing only underwear after a shower. She alleged he would place a towel on the bed before assaulting her, an act she says was violent and painful, and that he never used protection. Jane Doe 2 told a similar story, though hers stretched over nearly 6 years. She worked as a housekeeper from 2014 to 2020 and alleged she was assaulted at least 23 times. She described the abuse as constant and predictable, claiming Robinson would summon her to places without security cameras, like the garage or laundry room, before assaulting her. She also alleged repeated forced encounters in the blue bedroom, where she said she was coerced into sex and assaulted without protection. What stood out most in her filing was the alleged emotional control. She claimed that whenever she tried to refuse him, Robinson would threaten to make his wife treat her badly, using fear of retaliation to keep her silent. Jane Doe 3 worked in the Robinson home for over a decade, from 2012 until 2024. She alleged that Robinson assaulted her more than 20 times. Her account also described a repeated ritual: Robinson emerging from the bathroom in little or no clothing, placing a towel on the bed, and forcing himself on her. She also claimed that when she once resisted, he offered her $500 just to perform oral sex, an offer she said she refused. She described a work environment filled with unwanted touching and constant sexual advances. The fourth accuser, Jane Doe 4, said she worked closely with the couple for nearly 18 years, starting in 2006. She wasn't just a housekeeper, but also served as a personal assistant, cook, and hairdresser. According to her, the abuse began in 2007 during a trip to Robinson's Las Vegas home, where she claims he raped her. She alleged the assaults continued for years, including another incident in 2019 and repeated attacks in the blue bedroom at the main house. She said Robinson never used protection and described feeling completely humiliated after each encounter. The women explained their silence by pointing to fear. They said they were terrified of losing their jobs, being publicly shamed, and facing the emotional weight of speaking out against a global music legend. Alongside the assault claims, they also accused the Robinsons of labor violations, including unpaid overtime and denial of proper rest breaks. The allegations cast a heavy shadow over a career that had once seemed untouchable. For decades, Smokey Robinson wasn't just a singer. He was a symbol of Motown itself, a pioneer who helped shape modern music. But like many stories before it, this one raised the same uncomfortable question. What was really happening behind the scenes while the public was applauding? Robinson's legal team immediately pushed back, calling the accusations vile and false. His attorney, Christopher Frost, described the lawsuit as a shakedown and accused the plaintiff's lawyers of trying to create a media circus. He argued that the stories were full of inconsistencies and timeline issues and urged the public to withhold judgment. Robinson himself briefly addressed the situation in a phone call with the Daily Mail, saying he was appalled by the accusations. The tabloid reported that he sounded unwell and ended the call quickly, saying he couldn't speak about the matter. At first, the case remained civil. The L.A. County District Attorney's Office confirmed that no criminal case had been presented to them, and the LAPD declined to comment. Legal experts explained that civil cases only require proof that claims are more likely true than not, while criminal cases demand proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Public reaction was split. Some fans expressed shock and disappointment, while others defended Robinson, saying his age and health made the allegations hard to believe. Still, the singer's past was complicated. He had long been open about struggles with addiction and infidelity, and many fans believed his story of redemption through faith. To them, he was more than a performer. He was a survivor, a legend, and a trailblazer. Just 2 days after the lawsuit was filed, Robinson returned to the stage at the Beau Rivage Theater in Mississippi. He didn't mention the accusations once. Instead, he leaned into nostalgia, joking with fans and telling stories from the golden days of Motown. The crowd sang along, laughed, and applauded. By the end of the night, he left the stage to a standing ovation, as if the outside world had briefly faded away. Then, the story took another turn. On May 16, 2025, the LA County Sheriff's Department confirmed that Smokey Robinson was officially under criminal investigation. The Special Victims Bureau said the case was in its early stages and offered no further details. Robinson again denied all allegations, with his legal team saying they welcomed the investigation, calling the truth a powerful thing. His attorney told the BBC that the accusations were manufactured to destroy Robinson's reputation and turn the situation into a spectacle. He said the investigation only existed because the accusers filed a report and insisted both Smokey and his wife had done nothing wrong. By the end of the month, Robinson struck back. On May 29, 2025, he filed a $500 million cross-complaint against the four women, accusing them of defamation and elder abuse. His team also moved to have the women's anonymity removed, arguing that the allegations were so detached from reality that the Robinsons couldn't even identify which accuser was which. By the end of May 2025, the legal cloud hanging over Smokey grew even darker. On May 31st, news broke that yet another sexual assault allegation had surfaced, adding to the growing list of claims already threatening to reshape his legacy. This new development came just weeks after Robinson and his wife were accused of rape by 4 former housekeepers, but it also reopened a chapter from the past that many didn't know existed. According to the LA County District Attorney's Office, their files show that Robinson was the subject of a sexual assault allegation back in 2015. That case never moved forward, not because it was dismissed as false, but because prosecutors said there simply wasn't enough evidence at the time to file charges. The office confirmed that the allegation had been presented to them by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, but they declined to share more details, explaining that an active investigation tied to the newer accusations is still underway. As the public tried to keep up with the latest twists, the story took another turn in November 2025. 2 more accusers stepped forward with claims of sexual battery. Just 6 months after 4 former employees had filed a $50 million lawsuit against Robinson. Those original women had sued anonymously in May, but on November 14th, they returned to court with a motion to expand the case, asking to officially add 2 new alleged victims, a man and a woman. Both claimed that Robinson had tried to force them to touch him inappropriately. And with that filing, the lawsuit grew from 4 voices into 6, each one echoing a similar pattern of behavior. Robinson's legal team responded almost immediately. His attorney, Christopher Frost, released a statement calling the lawsuit an organized money grab aimed at exploiting an elderly music icon. He accused the accusers and their lawyers of hiding behind anonymity while chasing global attention, insisting that the allegations were fabricated and that the truth would eventually expose their financial motives. Court documents reviewed by People revealed disturbing new claims from a woman identified as Jane Doe 5. She said she worked as a housekeeper for Robinson on and off between 2005 and 2011 and described the harassment during those years as constant. According to her account, Robinson repeatedly grabbed her hand and tried to force her to touch him, sometimes more than 10 times. She also claimed he regularly called her into the bathroom while he was showering and asked her to scrub his back. She alleged that Robinson touched her breasts multiple times, an experience she said was so traumatic that it ultimately led her to undergo breast reduction surgery in 2015. Her accusations didn't stop with Smokey. She also named his wife, Frances, accusing her of creating a hostile work environment and using racially offensive language toward her while she was employed in their home. The motion also included claims from a man identified as John Doe 1. He said he began working for the Robinsons in 2013, mostly detailing their cars. According to his filing, Robinson would expose himself in front of him and touch himself while he was present. He alleged that the behavior escalated in 2022, when Robinson tried to force him to touch his penis. After that incident, he says he was fired, but about a year later, Frances allegedly contacted him and asked him to return to work. He did, but he claims the harassment continued. The filing describes a cycle of fear, humiliation, and emotional distress that left him constantly worried about his safety and dignity. The plaintiff's attorney, John Harris, praised the 2 new accusers for coming forward, calling their decision courageous and promising to fight aggressively to secure justice for them. He also argued that these new accounts weren't random or isolated. According to the motion, their stories mirrored the earlier accusations almost exactly, with the same locations, the same timing, and the same alleged conduct. Because of those similarities, the legal team asked the court to allow the case to expand and include the new claims. Then, in December 2025, the case took another unexpected turn. Robinson filed new court papers accusing one of his accusers of breaking into his property. According to the filing, the woman allegedly used an old key on November 22nd to enter a storage unit on his estate and remove multiple personal items. Robinson claimed the entire incident was captured on security cameras, showing the woman loading boxes of belongings into a car and leaving with 2 other people. The filing argued that while she may have once been trusted with a key during her employment, she had no legal right to be on the property anymore, let alone to take anything. As a result, the Robinson family asked the court for an emergency restraining order, demanding the return of the items, the surrender of any old keys, and an order requiring the woman to stay at least 100 yards away from the property. The woman named in the filing is one of the 4 former housekeepers who originally sued Robinson in May. In that lawsuit, which Robinson has fully denied, the women accused him of sexual assault, battery, and false imprisonment. By this point, What started as a single lawsuit had turned into a sprawling legal battle, one that continued to grow with every new claim, counterclaim, and revelation, pulling one of music's most celebrated figures deeper into a story far removed from the songs that once defined his name. Now 85, Smokey Robinson confesses, "She was the love of my life." Smokey Robinson grew up at 581 Belmont Street in Detroit's North End, and almost like something out of a movie, another future legend lived just a few doors away. Diana Ross was right there on the same block, two kids growing up in the same neighborhood, long before the world knew their names. Not long after, Diana's family moved to the Brewster Douglas housing projects, where she joined a local girl group called the Primettes. That group would eventually become the Supremes. And when Diana decided it was time to take music seriously, she already knew exactly who to call. Smokey had known her since she was about 8 years old. By the time Motown was up and running and Diana was getting ready to graduate high school, she reached out to him. She wanted him to hear her group. He listened, recognized the talent immediately, and that moment set history in motion. In her memoir, Secrets of a Sparrow, Diana later described Smokey as the Supremes' surrogate brother. He wasn't just a friend, he was a mentor, a guide, and someone she trusted deeply, even though he was constantly on the road as the Miracles exploded in popularity. Their bond was built on years of shared roots, shared dreams, and shared struggle. That connection went far beyond friendship. Between 1965 and 1970, Diana was involved in a very public relationship with Berry Gordy, Smokey's close friend and boss. Their personal and professional worlds were tightly intertwined, and when their daughter Rhonda was born just 9 months after the relationship ended, it only added another layer to the complicated history of Motown's inner circle. Years later, in 1985, Smokey surprised Diana on stage during her Las Vegas residency. Standing in front of the crowd, he proudly reminded everyone that he'd been there at the very beginning of her journey. The moment turned playful and emotional as the two shared laughs, a kiss, and then performed a duet of her song, Missing You. For two people who had shared decades of life and music, it was a rare moment captured in public. And strangely enough, despite everything they'd been through together, they never officially recorded a duet in the studio. In a later interview, Smokey finally spoke openly about his personal history with Diana. When it came up that she had written about them dating, he didn't deny it. He confirmed it and admitted the relationship lasted longer than it should have, especially since he was married at the time. It was a heavy admission and one that painted their connection in a more complicated light. That honesty stood in contrast to an earlier interview where Smokey had brushed off the idea of romance entirely. Back then, he had leaned into their childhood bond, saying they grew up just 4 doors down from each other and had always been close. When pressed further, he laughed it off again, insisting their closeness had simply been misunderstood. What remained undeniable, though, was the depth of their relationship. From neighborhood kids to Motown royalty, Smokey Robinson and Diana Ross shared a history that ran deeper than music, deeper than fame, and far deeper than the public ever really knew.